Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're really drilling down into Morocco's plan for national economic reform. It's basically a tactical blueprint aimed at tackling structural unemployment and, well, persistent poverty.
That's right. We've synthesized the key sources to give you a clear picture of this strategy.
And our mission here is to unpack the specific levers Morocco intends to use. We're talking industry expansion, social protection, the whole works, all geared towards hitting some pretty ambitious targets in the next, 2 to 5 years.
Exactly. And it's not just a wish list. It feels like an integrated strategy aiming for genuine economic stabilization.
Okay, but before we get into the how, we really need to grasp the scale of the problem. The numbers are quite stark.
They really are.
National unemployment is hovering around 13.3%, which is high.
Ugh.
But the figure that jumps out, the real risk, is youth unemployment. It's sitting near 36.7%.
Almost 37%. Think about that. More than 1 out of every 3 young people actively looking for work just can't find it.
It's a huge challenge, and that ties directly into poverty, right?
Absolutely. That failure to bring young people into the economy is a major reason poverty remains, well, sticky. Despite overall progress, poverty still impacts about 3.9% of the population.
So that's around 1.4 million people needing pathways out,
And
needing
remember,
stability.
precisely, economic pathways and, crucially, stabilization.
Okay, so let's dig behind those headline figures. They feel really structural, don't they? Not just some temporary dip.
Yeah.
What are the core reasons these challenges are so persistent? What's the why?
Yeah, looking at the analysis and the sources, there are 3 main structural drivers we need to understand. First, as you just highlighted, is the sheer scale of that youth unemployment crisis.
Right.
It's a massive demographic wave hitting an economic structure that, frankly, isn't bid to absorb it right now.
So just too many young people entering the workforce for the number of available entry-level positions.
Pretty much, yeah. The second driver is environmental, fundamentally. We're talking about climate shocks hitting rural areas hard,
Drought, mainly.
especially drought. It's recurrent now, and it's causing a huge loss of agricultural jobs. You have farmers who just can't make a living anymore. They're being displaced.
And where do they go? Usually towards the cities, I imagine?
Typically, yes. And that leads directly to the third driver,
Which is...
stalled urban job creation. The cities just aren't generating enough formal jobs quickly enough to cope with their own population growth, plus this influx of people moving from rural areas.
So it's like a double whammy. Climate displacement meets a bottleneck in urban employment.
Exactly. A convergence of 2 crises.
And there's another layer here we absolutely have to touch on, this structural inequality. The sources flag the unemployment rate for women specifically. It's at a staggering 19.4%.
19.4%. That figure is critical. It tells us this isn't just about skills, it's about structural exclusion from the formal economy.
Yeah, when almost 1 in 5 women who want to work can't find a job, it's, like you said, exclusion that's leaving so much potential untapped.
A massive loss of potential productivity for the entire economy. It highlights deep structural barriers.
Okay, so that's the diagnosis, a really challenging picture.
Yeah.
Now, let's shift to the prescription, the tactical playbook. What specific actions, what levers are being proposed to start bending that curve, especially in the short term, say, the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, the core of the job creation strategy seems to be scaling up industries that can absorb significant numbers relatively quickly. They're heavily backing the expansion of SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises.
In which sectors mainly?
Primarily services and light manufacturing. These tend to have lower barriers to entry for jobs, and they can often be scaled up faster than heavy industry.
Okay, but what about those displaced farmers we talked about? You can't just slot someone who's worked the land their whole life into a city service job, can you?
No, that needs a much more targeted approach, and the strategy recognizes that. For rural areas, there's a specific push towards green industries and agro-processing.
Agro-processing, so
Okay.
adding value to agricultural products locally.
Exactly. The idea is to create new, hopefully more stable jobs that are still linked to agriculture, but are less vulnerable to immediate climate shocks like drought. It absorbs some of that displaced workforce into related fields.
And I understand they're also using public works programs.
Yes, targeted public works, specifically focused on the provinces hit hardest by the drought. Now, public works can sometimes feel like a temporary fix.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is this just short-term relief, or is there a plan to make it lead to something more permanent?
Well, the emphasis seems to be on programs that bundle work with mandatory skills training. And critically, they're trying to link these projects to essential local infrastructure needs, things like water management systems or improving local roads.
So the public works actually build the foundation for future private sector growth in those same areas.
Yeah, that's the goal. Build needed infrastructure and provide immediate employment and skills. The sources actually estimate that these efforts combined SMEs, agro-processing, targeted public works could potentially shave 1 to 2 percentage points off the national unemployment rate if, and it's a big if, they're implemented effectively.
1 to 2 points is significant. But as we know, creating job slots isn't enough if people don't have the right skills. We always hear about this matching problem, right? Openings exist, but the workforce isn't trained for them. How does the plan address that?
Right, and without fixing the matching problem, you just keep producing what one source bluntly called frustrated graduates, people with degrees or training that the market doesn't actually need.
So what's the fix?
The strategy calls for a major overhaul of vocational training. The key is tying it directly, and I mean directly, to certified market demand. Curriculums need to adapt in real time based on what specific industries and companies say they need now.
Okay, makes sense. But how do you bridge that gap between, say, the training center and the actual factory floor or office?
Incentives, mainly. First, they're promoting apprenticeship programs with government backing. Financial incentives for companies to actually take on young people and train them on the job.
Okay.
Second, they're leaning into technology, using digital job platforms to connect rural youth who often lack mobility with remote work opportunities. It's about using tech to overcome some of those geographical barriers.
Interesting. Using digital tools to tackle rural unemployment. I'd say that covers the job side quite thoroughly. Let's pivot now sharply to poverty. You mentioned earlier the HCP data revealed something surprising.
Yeah, this part is fascinating. The HCP, that's Morocco's High Planning Commission, their main stats body, their data showed this kind of poverty paradox. Rural poverty actually dropped quite significantly between 2014 and 2022.
Dropped from what to what?
It fell from 9.5% down to 6.9%.
Wow, that seems counterintuitive given the drought pressures we just discussed. But what happened in the cities?
Simultaneously, urban poverty actually crept up. It went from 1.6% to 2.2% over the same period.
Okay, wait. Rural poverty falling, urban poverty rising. Why? What's driving the increase in urban areas?
The main factor seems to be the cost of living, especially in cities, rising faster than wages for lower income groups. Think housing, food, basic necessities. Inflation is hitting urban families hard.
And job quality in cities.
That's the other piece. Many urban jobs are in the informal sector. They're unstable, lack benefits, no real security.
So we're talking about the working poor. People might have a job, but it's so precarious that one unexpected expense, a rent hike, a health issue, pushes them back into poverty.
Exactly that. The key concept here is vulnerability. There are many households living just above the official poverty line, but their situation is incredibly fragile.
One shock away from falling back.
Precisely. One bad harvest in the rural context, or one sharp inflation spike in the urban one, and boom, they're back in deep poverty. Any economic gains they might have made aren't secure.
Right. Which brings us to social protection. You framed it earlier not as charity, but as economic stabilization. That term shock absorption keeps coming up. What does that actually mean in policy terms?
Think of it like building an economic safety net or maybe an economic parachute. It's about creating systems that shock absorption. So when external storms hit, whether it's a climate disaster or global inflation, people aren't immediately wiped out. Their basic stability is protected.
So what are the actual tools Morocco is planning to use for this parachute?
They're focusing on a few key instruments. Conditional cash transfers are one, giving money to vulnerable families, but linking it to certain actions like keeping kids in school or getting vaccinations.
Okay.
Also, targeted subsidies, making essentials more affordable, but focusing their subsidies carefully on those who genuinely need them most to avoid huge fiscal costs. And very importantly for rural areas, specific drought insurance for farmers.
Drought insurance.
Yeah.
That sounds crucial for resilience in agriculture.
Yeah.
Helps them weather the storm without losing everything.
Exactly. It helps maintain stability and assets even when the rains fail. It's about institutionalizing resilience.
Okay, makes sense. Now, let's talk foundations. Things often overlooked but critical for any of this to work. Infrastructure and social reform. What kind of basic physical infrastructure is seen as essential?
Well, the analysis clearly shows that poverty tends to cluster where infrastructure is weakest. If you map the areas with the highest exclusion, they're often the most disconnected.
So access is key.
Access equals economic opportunity, or lack of access equals exclusion. The strategy highlights the need for reliable roads to connect producers to markets, stable electricity to power businesses, and increasingly affordable high-speed broadband internet.
And the economic logic there. How does better infrastructure directly help?
It just lowers the cost of doing business for everyone. It opens up markets for rural goods. Crucially, it allows non-agricultural jobs, like that agro-processing plant we discussed, to actually be viable in more remote areas. You can't run a modern factory without reliable power and transport.
Right. Then there's what the sources call gender infrastructure. This sounds like more than just roads and power lines. It's framed as a potential deal breaker for the whole strategy.
Absolutely fundamental. This connects directly back to that 19.4% female unemployment rate. The point is, if a woman literally cannot take a job because there's no childcare available, or if she faces legal discrimination in the workplace.
Then no amount of job training programs will matter.
Exactly. It doesn't matter how skilled she is. The strategy recognizes the need for essential social reforms and infrastructure. Things like government-supported childcare options and legal reforms to ensure genuine equal opportunity and protection for women in the formal workforce.
So it's about tackling the practical, logistical, and sometimes legal barriers that stop women from participating fully in the economy first. You have to clear those hurdles before the job creation stuff can even work for them.
You have to enable participation before you can even begin to measure employment success for that demographic. It's foundational.
Okay, so we've covered the diagnosis, the job tactics, the poverty paradox, the safety nets, the infrastructure. Let's pull it all together. Looking at the 5-year vision outlined in these plans, what are the big consolidated numerical targets Morocco is shooting for?
The targets are definitely ambitious. They signal serious intent. They want to push the national unemployment rate down below 10%. That would be a major achievement.
And the youth unemployment number, the really worrying one.
That 36.7%. The goal is to slash that significantly, aiming for under 25%.
Okay, getting it below 1 in 4. Still high, but a huge improvement. What about poverty reduction?
The target is to cut the overall national poverty rate to under 2.5%. And importantly, there's an explicit goal of narrowing those big regional gaps, using that rural job creation focus we talked about.
And the gender dimension. How are they tracking inclusive growth there?
That's seen as critical. The specific target is to narrow the gender unemployment gap, the difference between male and female unemployment rates, down to less than 5 percentage points.
Less than 5 points. So that's their metric for ensuring growth is shared more equitably.
Yes, ensuring the benefits reach across demographics, not just concentrated in one group. It's about genuinely inclusive growth.
Okay, ambitious goals. But every plan faces risks. What are the major external threats identified in the sources? The big roadblocks that could potentially derail this whole strategy, even if it's implemented perfectly on paper.
There are two really big ones highlighted. The first is environmental, and it's largely outside their direct control. Climate shocks,
The droughts again?
worsening drought, potential agricultural collapse. If these climate impacts accelerate faster than resilience measures can keep up, it could completely undermine the rural job creation plans. It means investment in water security and climate adaptation has to happen alongside, not after, the labor policies.
They have to be pursued in parallel.
Yeah.
Got it. And the second major risk?
Financial stability, specifically inflation. If price increases consistently outrun wage growth, especially for essential goods, then all the progress made in reducing poverty could evaporate very quickly. Those vulnerable households we discussed, particularly in urban areas, would be pushed right back below the poverty line.
So that demands really tight fiscal management and making sure those targeted subsidies actually reach the people who need them when prices spike.
Exactly. Strong fiscal discipline and effective targeted social safety nets become absolutely critical to protect those gains.
Okay. So bringing this deep dive to a close, it feels like we've unpacked a strategy that's much more than just slogans. It seems coherent, built on maybe 5 interconnected pillars.
I think that's a good way to summarize it. You've got 1, create jobs where they can scale quickly, like SMEs and targeted rural industries. 2, match skills directly to what the market actually needs. 3, protect the vulnerable through robust social protection, that shock absorption.
4, build the essential physical infrastructure for economic access. And 5, crucially, close the gender gap by addressing the underlying social and logistical barriers.
Right, it hangs together as a multi-pronged approach. It recognizes the interconnectedness of these issues.
It really emphasizes resilience, doesn't it?
It does, and maybe that leads to a final thought, something for the listener to consider. Connecting this Moroccan strategy to the bigger global picture. What does it really take For any country to successfully embed these kinds of shock absorption policies deep within its institutions.
How do you make sure that economic progress, once you achieve it, is genuinely protected against these massive external forces like climate change and global inflation waves?
Yeah. How intertwined do environmental, social, and economic policies need to become to build that kind of lasting, resilient prosperity? It's a fundamental question for development everywhere, I think.
A very potent question to end on. It highlights the complexity and the necessity of integrated thinking.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored Morocco's economic playbook. We'll catch you next time with more insights.